Federalist 43, Part 2. I'm going to start at the beginning of the paper. The fourth class comprises the following miscellaneous powers. 1. A power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for a limited time to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. The utility of this power will scarcely be questioned. The copyright of authors has been solemnly adjudged in Great Britain to be a right at common law. The right to useful inventions seems with equal reason to belong to the inventors. The public good fully coincides in both cases with the claims of individuals. The public good fully coincides in both cases with the claims of individuals. The states cannot separately make effectual provision for either of these cases, and most of them have anticipated the decision of this point by laws passed at the instance of Congress. So here it's talking about copyrights, the rights to invention. We know that if somebody knows that their hard work is not violated, there's more encouragement to them working hard, to coming up with new things, so that not only they can benefit financially, but also the society in large can benefit from it. And he says that in England and Great Britain, in 18th century, there have been cases that the courts and the judges have sided with the inventors and patent owners and copyright owners. So he says this will be great for all of society. So, like I said in part 1, he's going to look at the four categories. This is the fourth category that he's going to defend, fourth categories of rights that have been given to federal government. And like I said in part 1, there are 9 clauses that he'll go through and explain. We just heard the first part, now we go to part 2. Clause 2, I should say. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the states, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful things. At that time, in 1787-88, states were competing so that one of their cities becomes the capital of the United States. And they were even offering free land to the federal government. They would say, yes, come and build the capital of the United States here. But here he talks about wherever the capital is going to be, that the federal government is going to be in charge of laws and lawmaking for that district. It says a district not exceeding 10 miles square. So that would be the seat of federal government, and states cannot make laws for that country's capital. What they decided to do is to find a place that was not within any state. So that's why they chose Washington, D.C., what came to be Washington, D.C., on the banks of a river. And of course, you will know later on as you read a little bit more about the American history, they say that a deal was made between Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and Thomas Jefferson, that if Madison and Jefferson agree with Hamilton about certain things, Hamilton will agree with Jefferson's and Madison's idea of a state capital, a country's capital being right next to Virginia, because Madison and Jefferson were from Virginia. Also, if the federal government buys land from any state to put cannons or to build forts and stuff like that, the federal government will be in charge of making laws for that place. All right, I'll continue reading. The indispensable necessity of complete authority at the seat of government carries its own evidence with it. It is a power exercised by every legislature of the Union, I might say of the world, by virtue of its general supremacy. Without it, not only the public authority might be insulted and its proceedings be interrupted with impunity, but a dependence of the members of general government on the state comprehending the seat of the government for protection in the exercise of their duty might bring on the national councils an imputation of awe or influence, equally dishonorable to the government and dissatisfactory to the other members of the Confederacy. He says it's obvious that the federal government should be in charge of the lawmaking for what is going to be its capital. Because if the capital is within a state, it is very easy to see that that state is going to influence it, is going to want favors, and this in the long run not only takes credit and honor away from the federal government, but also creates animosity within the states, because some of the states say, well, we should have had this country's capital here and we would have been more influential. So he says, just instead of doing that, let's find a piece of land and designate it as a federal property and get the states out of the picture. This consideration has the more weight as the gradual accumulation of public improvements at the stationary residence of the government would be both too great a public pledge to be left in the hands of a single state, and would create so many obstacles to a removal of the government as still further to abridge its necessary independence. The extent of this federal district is sufficiently circumscribed to satisfy every jealousy of an opposite nature. And as it is to be appropriated to this issue with the consent of the state seating it, as the state will no doubt provide in the compact for the rights and the consent of the citizens inhabiting it, as the inhabitants will find sufficient inducements of interest to become willing parties to the cession, as they will have had their voice in the election of the government, which is to exercise authority over them, as a municipal legislature for local purposes derived from their own suffrages will of course be allowed them, and as the authority of the legislature of the state and of the inhabitants of the ceded part of it to concur in the cession will be derived from the whole people of the state in their adoption of the Constitution, every imaginable objection seems to be obviated. The necessity of a like authority over forts, magazines, and established by the general government is not less evident. Let me read this again. The necessity of a like authority over forts, magazines, established by the general government is not less evident. The public money expended on such places and the public property deposited in them require that they should be exempt from the authority of the particular state. Nor would it be proper for the places on which the security of the entire Union may depend to be in any degree dependent on a particular member of it. All objections and scruples are here also obviated by requiring the concurrence of the states concerned in every such establishment. So let's say the federal government wants to create a new territory, create a new state, or take a piece of land for federal use. He says it has to be with the acceptance of the states that are going to be affected. So federal government cannot just on its own go carve and cut up a territory from within established state and create a new state. He says it has to be accepted by states that are going to be affected. So if federal government decides to create a new state out of land that belongs to two different states, those two different states have to agree to it.